Hi, everybody, and thanks for tuning in to this Leland in the Kitchen episode. This is episode number 2, where we are going to be making a pineapple upside down cake. So, the ingredients and the process, the written version is on YouTube, so you can look at that while you're watching the video. So the first thing we start with is a 1/4 cup of butter. That's just half a stick. So we put that in the pan. So this is a 8x8 or 9x9 baking pan. In this case, I'm making it something that I can put in the microwave oven because now no metal. So I'm going to take this and put this in the microwave oven to melt the butter. So, 15, 30 seconds, something like that. And then we're going to start putting in sugar and some of the fruit and nuts that make put it on the bottom, and then when we flip it to make the pineapple upside down cake, that'll be the topping. So here's the melted butter. We don't have to completely melt it as long as we mix it up with the stuff that is melted so that it makes kind of a uniform layer at the bottom of the pan. I found that microwaving it so that it's completely melted tends to make a big mess in your microwave oven, things spattering and stuff. So there it is, kind of uniformly mixed up. So next we want to add the sugar. So this is a 1/2 cup of granulated maple sugar. And again, maple sugar in my recipes, it's kind of critical. If you don't use maple sugar, then you kind of don't really want to be using my recipes. These are all enhanced by this maple sugar that we use. So now we mix in the maple sugar. As you can see, I've got it sprinkled in. Well, let's continue mixing it in with the butter until it's all moistened, and then we want to make sure that it's uniformly distributed on the bottom here so that we get a nice uniform layer at the top once we've turned this upside down. So you can see I tend to go up and down to try to squish it out and make it uniform and not too lumpy all the way around. Whatever works for you, but reasonably uniform. Okay, so now we need to add the fruit. So there's pineapple, cherries, and then there's nuts too, the pecans. So the interesting thing about this is that the normal recipe calls for pineapple rings, kind of like that. And we're not going to be using rings. It makes it more difficult to cut into pieces that people can share, and so I've used crushed pineapple instead of the pineapple rings. So That takes a little more effort, so let me show you what is involved with that. So, first off, we need a can of crushed pineapple. If you want, you can do this with a real fresh pineapple and cut it all up and turn it into small bits like you would get in a crushed pineapple. I think that'll definitely taste better, but it's definitely a lot more work. So it's kind of up to you whether you want to do that. Now, one of the things about the canned pineapple is that it comes in a usually it's packed in pineapple juice, so make sure you get that kind. But the thing is that the pineapple juice makes the cake a little too watery. So what we'll do is we'll take some paper towels and we'll make a double layer of paper towels. We'll put that on a plate, and then we'll take half the can. We only need half because it's too much for one. So we take it off the top and we place it on the paper towel like this, and so the liquid soaks into the paper towel. And we do this a whole bunch of different globs on our paper towel, enough so that we end up with about half of what's in the can. So my cans usually have somewhere between 15 and 20 ounces. This one I think is a 20 ouncer. I don't think it's too critical that you worry about that. Somewhere in there is good enough. So now you'll see that this is all very soaked into the paper towel. And so what we want to do is we want to get some more paper towel and get some more of that liquid to soak into this new paper towel. So we place it on top and we press it in so that we can remove more of that liquid. Take it off, maybe fold it up and blot at it with the paper towel yourself, trying to get as much of the liquid out of your pineapple before you add it to the cake. So I would say it's worth doing it one more time, usually. So we do it again, squish down on it. It's still very liquidy, as you can see. It's still getting very wet. And fold it up again. Use the dry parts to blot at it. And that'll be good enough. So now we take that plate with the paper towel and the pineapple. We go back to our baking pan over here. And now we carefully take this off of the paper towel and drop it into our baking pan, trying to uniformly distribute it on the baking pan. It takes a little bit of patience. You don't want to get any of the paper towel in your cake. So just very carefully loosen this from the paper towel. So I wouldn't go too crazy trying to get every little bit, otherwise you'll get some paper towel too. So that's good enough. Now we need to make sure we distribute this uniformly. So at the moment it's kind of not distributed at all. So let's take it and we'll very carefully use our fork to distribute this all around the bottom of this baking pan, trying not to disturb the maple sugar that we already put in there. Okay, so that's reasonably distributed. So now we'll add the cherries. So cherries, the usual recipe calls for maraschino cherries, but we are not going to do maraschino cherries. Big reason is because we're not particularly interested in using white sugar as a sweetener. So we're going to take, again, a can. In this case, it's a can of dark red tart cherries. 15, 20 ounces, somewhere in there. And ideally, we want it packed in either cherry juice or water. We don't want that heavy syrup stuff. Again, we're avoiding sugar. So we take that can, open it up, dump out the liquid as best we can. I'm just shaking it into my kitchen sink here. And then we will have our fork. Again, we'll use about half the can. And I will take them out 1, 2, 3 at a time, drop them into our baking pan. Let me make sure you can see it. Now, one of the things that comes with cherries is cherry pits, so be careful while you're dumping these in. If you notice anything hard, try to get rid of it before you put it into the cake. Who wants a cherry pit in their cake? So once you've got them in there, try to distribute them reasonably evenly throughout the bottom of the cake here, cake pan. And okay, so that's about half. Again, not too critical, more or less. So it should look kind of like that when you're done with the cherries. All right, so the next step is to add the nuts. So this recipe calls for pecans, and about a quarter cup. For me, that is about a handful. So I use the halves and pieces, so whatever works for you. So I will take these and I will distribute them between the cherries, and I will kind of push them down into the pineapple so that they kind of have a home that they like to stay in. Otherwise, they will tend to float in the batter once you put the batter in. So try to just push them, not too hard, but push them into the pineapple, a little bit when you put them in there, and just kind of randomly distribute them between the cherries. There's a lot of places you could put them. It's not too critical you fill all the spaces or anything like that. You're just trying to randomly distribute things, and it doesn't have to be densely populated, if you know what I mean, with all these nuts. Just kind of randomly. So once you're done with that, okay, I have a few left. So now we have made a little bit. Now we have made the topping. Okay, so now you can see these are the nuts kind of pushed gently into that pineapple, and so the topping is made. So now we're going to put this aside, and the next step is to use a bowl and start making the cake batter. So the cake batter has pretty much the usual cake batter ingredients. So we'll start with whole wheat flour, and this is a cup and a quarter whole wheat flour. So you'll notice I just kind of pour it in. I don't worry about sifting or carefully measuring. So here's a cup. And here's a quarter. All right, close enough. And then we'll do 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder. I tend to use this kind, which doesn't have aluminum in it. Okay, 1.5 baking powder. And last but not least, a little bit of salt. In this case, we're only going to use half a teaspoon of salt. Let's see. And then we also have to put in a cup of maple sugar. I tend to just kind of pour it. All right. That's about a cup. Good enough. So now we just want to mix that up a little bit before we add the wet ingredients. So some recipes make you use 2 bowls, one for wet, one for dry when you're doing this stuff. I am not that picky, and it doesn't seem to matter. So I have mixed up all the dry ingredients. Now you can see it, it's just mixed up dry ingredients. So now we will add the wet ingredients, which involves buttermilk, oil, and vanilla. Oops. Sorry about that. Okay, so buttermilk, it's kind of really important you use buttermilk. So we need 3/4 cup of buttermilk. This is kind of thick, gooey stuff. So when you pour it into these cup measures, it will tend to stick to the edges. So I use my fork to make sure I get all of the stuff I can off the sides. Alright, that's our 3/4 cup of buttermilk. Then we need a 1/3 cup of olive oil. You could use any oil. I prefer olive oil. It's up to you. Alright, 1/3 cup. Where's my 1/3 cup measure? There it is. Alright, 1/3 cup of olive oil. Alright. And then a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Just a little bit. Alright, vanilla extract. Use vanilla flavor if you'd prefer to have a non-alcoholic version of this recipe. All right, so there's what it looks like, and we'll just start. First I generally try to mix the wet with the wet while it's in here. Not being too careful that I'm not doing this in a separate bowl. So mix the wet with the wet. Once that's kind of mixed, then I mix that with the dry. Alright, that looks well mixed to me. So, now that we've done that, we can go back to our baking pan here with the fruit in it, and we want to carefully, slowly pour all this batter on top of all this fruit and nut mixture. A topping, basically, that's on the bottom of the pan at the moment. So we carefully let gravity do the work. And we carefully put it on different parts of the topping as it comes off. So it's very, very slow. So now we use the rubber spatula to get the rest. Again, keeping it slow. If you don't do it slowly, what can happen is the fruit and the nuts can start getting dislodged and start floating in the batter, and then they won't be on the top, and you want them on the top. So this is kind of important to make sure you do this slowly. So once we've got all the batter out of the pan, or out of the bowl and into the pan, it doesn't look particularly well distributed yet. So we'll very gently move it around so that it covers up all of the filling, all of the topping, without moving the topping around too much. It's critical. So just very, very carefully, usually moving it from the center to the edges. Very carefully doing it so that you don't dislodge all that topping. Got some on the edge here. Need to get it off the edge so that it doesn't burn. It'll burn otherwise, let's face it. A little teeny bit of dough on the edge. Okay, so we got it off the edge. Got it fairly well distributed so that it's more or less flat. So hopefully you can see that it's flat. So now it's ready to bake. So that was pretty quick, right? So we bake it for, let's see, it's 40 to 45 minutes on 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And while it's in the oven, you can work on the pan that you need for holding it. And that is something that I kind of came up with this idea to make it easy to bring to work for when we had parties and such. And the idea is that you need something that's flat. Generally, dinner plates aren't flat, so it's not really a good solution for this. You can use a cake pan, a cake dish that has a nice flat bottom to it. But they're kind of heavy usually. If it's not heavy, go ahead and use it. What I ended up doing was getting a piece of cardboard. In this case, it's just kind of about a foot by a foot. I put plastic wrap over it, and I kind of taped it on the other side so that it's completely covered in plastic wrap. And so that is going to be where my cake goes. And the whole idea is that, right, this goes upside down on the cake pan, and then flip it over. So this is very light and easy to handle when you're doing that. So think about that before you decide what you want to use, because it needs to be something that's easy to do that operation with. You're going to be putting it on the top, you're going to be holding both the hot pan and this, and you're going to be flipping it upside down. So maybe even experiment before you try it out, because this is going to be a critical operation when we get to it in 45 minutes. So think about what works for you. This works for me, just a piece of cardboard covered with plastic wrap. And so I'll be back when the cake is done, and I'll show you that part of the recipe where we have to kind of turn it upside down and then maybe do a few repairs on the cake before it's ready to show. One of the key things about this cake is that it's much better when it's served warm. So make sure that you serve it warm, and if you have to make it ahead, if you make it on this plastic wrap, you can microwave it in the oven, warm it up a little bit before you need to serve it, because it's a lot better that way. So I'll be back with the rest of the recipe. Okay, well, it's been 45 minutes and the cake has come out with toothpick inserted in the center, comes out clean. If you want to know what not clean looks like, if it's at all shiny when it comes out, that probably means it has some of the batter still stuck to it. So this is something you'll have to get used to as you do it more. But so now it already came out. I've already waited the 5 minutes. I'll just go around with my knife a little bit more to make sure that it's not attached. So here's let me show you up close how I do this. So I go around, up and down, all the way to the bottom, making sure it's not stuck anywhere. It's extremely important to do this, otherwise you'll get a big mess when you go to invert it. And so when you're done, hopefully it even looks kind of loose. That's the goal. So now we can do the next step, which is inverting it. So I've got my piece of cardboard coated in plastic, and I invert this right on top of it. Right? So that's the part that the cake is going to rest on. And I have my mitts so that I can hold this and flip it very quickly. So I'm going to do this pretty quickly. So on it goes. Hold it tight, flip, and now, if you look at it, you'll see that it has, some of it is sticking to the top, some of it is not. One of the advantages of having a see-through cake pan for this particular part. So now we're going to carefully remove this. And now we need to repair it. So if you see it up close, you can see that it's got some parts that aren't particularly done well. So we need to smooth out the top and then use the stuff that has stuck into the pan to repair it with. So we'll just take these out and use our knife to spread it in the areas of the cake that seem to need it. So I'll admit this is probably something that does not happen with the original recipe, where you have the pineapple rings, but I think it's more than made up for by the ease of cutting this into pieces for everybody to eat. Everybody gets a little bit of pineapple, a little bit of cherry, a little bit of nuts in every bite. So it's definitely not nearly as pretty as with maraschino cherries and the pineapple rings, but with the maple sugar and all the rest of the changes I've made, it really does taste a lot better. So that's it. That's the recipe. Thank you for watching, and hope you tune in next time for Leland in the Kitchen. Bye-bye.